What's good tonight, folks? It's your man Donald King, back at it again. I'm trying to be in high spirits right now, but I'm just going to be honest, man. I'm kind of salty right now. I had a project that I was working on, and, it's like, I guess the person I was doing the project for, they pulled the plug on it before I could bring it to completion because apparently they weren't happy with my approach to this particular project, right? And it's like, it kind of got me thinking, you know what I'm saying? It kind of got me thinking about how I've generally approached things through life. And that's the reason why I guess I wanted to talk about it in tonight's podcast, okay? And it entails everything that I go through in my avatar work, but even just how I process things on an academic level and just in general. I'm something called an autodidactic. Autodidactic, that's a person who's a self-teacher, okay? Through no fault of my own, somehow I'm able to see and make sense of the world in a way that's very non-conventional. As such, how I approach things is it's gonna seem discombobulated and jumbled on the front end for those who are perceiving me do what I do, who are used to seeing things go through procedural steps. And you're supposed to do this, then that, then this, then that. And that's cool, but how I build momentum is, once I get a basic grasp of it, my mind reconfigures it, and then once I reconfigure it, everything all comes together. It fits and locks together, if that makes sense. It's how I write songs, it's how I develop recipes. It's how I learn things. Example, when I was a kid, everybody tied their ties and they would do the loop around and the hook through, and it always resulted in this sort of, I guess, isosceles triangle at the knot part that looked stupid as hell to me. And I looked at it and, I used to have to tie ties all the time when I was going to the Kingdom Hall. And it just bothered the shit out of me because it was not even. So I actually learned how to make my ties backwards. So I would, and I'll have to try and tie one again before too long. But it's loop around, swing around, loop through, second time around, take it off. My tie would come out backwards. I would put it back on, but I got me a perfect equilateral triangle working that way. That's the way that I work with pretty much everything. Most people who I know, they who learned music, they either learned by study or through church or things of that nature. And even in church you still have to study music. My guy, he showed me a 2-chord song on the piano when I was 16. I learned what chord was supposed to sound like, and from there I learned maybe one or two other people's songs, and I started writing my own system of music because that's how my mind processes information and reality. Then to a point where I could start writing for bands and people would be like, yo, how did you put these sounds together? This doesn't follow or adhere to the types of the system of music that we know. And I'm like, yeah, this is how it makes sense to me. But the reason why I'm mentioning this, and I jump straight into it, normally I go through a process where it's like I'm filling out the audience for people who's dialing in and whatnot. It's because it gets to a greater point. I hate being interrupted. I hate being interrupted when my mind is in the process of organizing how I'm about to go about doing something and make that fit into everything else that I'm doing at the time. In addition to trying to do this project, I'm also still running my little baking company, and I'm filling orders here for restaurants and for customers there. And I still got time. I got to go spend some time with my little boy this weekend. I have a very busy life. And I figured out how to work this in and how to bring it to a point of completion within the given time frame that I have to work with, and everything was all set. And then, the person who I'm doing the project for, they come along and they start sort of micromanaging my process. And it threw a couple of wrenches into the machine, and I was making adjustments for it, but like 2 days in, they well, it's like, I don't know if I feel comfortable with you continuing any further. And it made me mad because now I'm vested in the project. Now I want to see it done completely. Like, 'cause it's like, I already have it like mapped out inside my head, like how to do this. It's like, and what it should look like in the end, even to the point where like one portion they wanted done in a particular way, done in a particular color. And it's like when I like sort of brushed what I was doing on there and saw that wasn't a match, I was like, oh no, that's not what you want to go with ultimately. So it's like I'm sitting here making all these notes and everything. I was doing well. I did have some setbacks again, just switching methods, trying to appease what was asked of me, and then also adhere to a different set of instructions too. But this is something that bothers me in general. There's a lot of people who sort of move by authority, okay? And that is, you learn one particular way of doing something and then think that everything must adhere to that particular procedure, or it's nonsensical. And the reason why I mention that is because it's like I deal with a lot of people who are on the hey brother Ash, bro, what's good, man? I have a lot of people who are of the scientific community, who are in the medicine community and all these other things. And they come to me and, my method for making sense of things is very different from theirs. They have the procedure of institution backing them, and I operate from an innate space of understanding. Right? Now, on the front end, when you're looking at me explain all of these phenomena and effects that I understand, that I can see, with what it is I purport to have been blessed with, figuring out the language models, it's going to seem sloppy and discombobulated on the front end. You know what I'm saying? It's going to seem a little wonky. You're like, yo, why is he doing it this way? Why is he doing it that way? Oh, he made a mistake here. Oh, he made a mistake there. And they're judging the method, not the outcome. If you compare any of the outcomes that I get in general with everything that I do, the consistency with which I perform across the board, it tells the truth of whether or not you can trust my judgment. The consistency it demonstrates, the consistency I demonstrate in terms of understanding, it tells you whether or not you can trust my judgment in general. Right? And when people like jump to conclusions based on how I'm proceeding with something, not whether or not I'm making like lots of errors or mistakes, but instead based on how I did something and how it doesn't align with what they learned, they end up cutting me off before I get a chance to get to my point. And when I get to my point, then they're like, oh yeah, I see why you did it that way. But I hate being cut off. I hate not being given the opportunity to show that I'm always going to make sense and that I'm always operating from a space of understanding of what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? That bothers me greatly. It bothers me greatly. It was this, it's an old Bruce Lee film. Where, Bruce Lee is, what was it? Enter the Dragon. And it had Jim Kelly in there. And they were on Mr. Han's Island. And, Jim Kelly, he was chilling, and the guy says, your style of martial arts is unorthodox. And Jim Kelly's like, yeah, but effective. And that was one of the greatest lines to me in cinema history. His style was unorthodox, but effective. The same thing with Bruce Lee. The same thing can be said with him developing Jeet Kune Do. You know what I'm saying? Jeet Kune Do to traditional kung fu master, a Shaolin kung fu master. It looks ridiculous, but it's more succinct. It's to the point. It hits. It's effective. And people who adhere to procedure and institutional authority, a lot of times, they miss the little nuances that make things great. Because they're so busy worried about steps and procedures that they can't see when something is working well. Or can work well, even if it looks a little wonky and discombobulated on the front end. Brother Ashborough comes in. Hi, Don. I think I have a good taste for music, but translating that to an instrument or digital operating system is something I find very alien. Yeah, that works the same way, kind of with me. I understand how it all fits together in my mind. So when I'm in a music studio, it's like, and I'm practiced in it, then it's like I'm kind of like a beast. But, when it comes to playing piano or like guitar or things of that nature, I'm proficient enough to get my ideas and thoughts across to people. But as far as being able to express fluidly through the instruments, I can't. But it's like it doesn't matter because I can get there in my mind. So as long as I can convey to whoever I'm using as an instrument for expression what it is that I need to happen, then I'm going to get phenomenal results. And also, suddenly, free flow has been stifled by rigidity of rules with music, poetry, painting, whatever. But free flow is the most enjoyable for me. Yeah, me too. I don't even know if it's most enjoyable at this point. I find it to be most effective for me. And not just me in general. I mean, like just adaptive thinking in general. It's just more effective. It's more effective. It costs less. This is how it works for me. And I'm not saying that it has to work that way for everyone, but, I think you have an unconventional level of self-respect, Donald King. Donald, integrity of the mind and body. You got the vibe of a guy who knows what he's about. Thank you. And let me see. Leroy Espire Quetzal. Okay, Espire Quetzal. Agreed. I call it linear philosophy. People adhere to predetermined formulas, and that's true, brother. And it's like, forgive me as I struggle to get your thing. I saw Quetzal and I was thinking Quetzalcoatl. But yeah, it's like you when people are working from an innate space of understanding, you kind of got to let them do their thing. There are some people who just approach things in ways that aren't going to make sense to you, and you need to have the mental fluidity to step back and allow them to go through their process in order to get the result they know how to get. Look at how I speak. Look at the way in which I express myself in this podcast right now. Now, if you were to judge my ability for articulation when I first started doing this avatar work, you would think that I was a crazy person. How I pieced words together based on what I understood, it took years and years of refinement and arguing and allowing myself to be tested and go through various forms of pressure tests in order to get to a point where I can convey my thoughts and ideas with the fluidity I'm able to speak with. But that's practice. And more importantly, not only is it practice, it's me learning how to dial in and convey what is inside to an audience seamlessly. Maybe with a pause or two here or there. But the point is, when I dial into flow state, I'm golden. But when I keep getting interrupted because someone wants to micromanage how I'm approaching something, you know what I'm saying? That stifles my process, and it frustrates me a great deal. It frustrates me a great deal. Especially when I already know what I'm going to do and, like, you know, have already, I don't know, made allowances for what I might make in the way of mistakes and how I'm going to handle those and all those other things. If I have it mapped out in my mind of how to proceed with something, and it's very much like how it used to be when I was back in grade school and even back in high school. I sucked in math. I sucked in math because they wanted me to work the steps the way that they were presented in the book. I didn't even bother reading the book. The only thing I do is watch somebody work out a problem on the board, and I'm like, oh yeah, y'all are doing that wrong. Boom. Go back, and I understood the entire concept just watching someone work through it, as opposed to trying to, or even working through it myself, as opposed to trying to follow steps and procedures that were outlined by somebody else. Everybody processes information and reality in different ways, and some of us are exceptionally gifted when it comes to processing information and reality and getting specific types of results. You know, and just to have that process policed by someone who doesn't process information in the way that you do, it becomes stifling. It becomes very infuriating. Like, just let me work. Let me do my thing. You know what I'm saying? Let me see. Yes, let me see. Me too, bro. Brother Ash, bro, comes back in. Me too, bro. I'm less hindered and hesitant in free flow, where I just let the flow ride out. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I have to be in a point where I'm allowed to just do my thing. And when I'm allowed to do my thing, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, but it's usually like 10 out of 10. People be like, oh, yeah, I see where you're going with that. Yeah, I got it. Every now and again, my calculation, especially when it comes to something like I'm cooking or something like that, it might be a little off. But I self-adjust. And that's the other part about being autodidactic. You self-adjust. If something is off, then you're like, you figure out what's wrong, you make the adjustment, and then go back and fix your errors and oversights. But when someone comes along trying to police your process, it's too much. Like, let me just do me. Let me see. Brother Leroy, Espiricuito, same happened to me. In calculus, they have a problem that took 45 minutes that I finished in 10. They called in other teachers to see if I was cheating, then began to use my formula to solve their equations. Exactly. When you operate, and this is the thing, there's a difference between operating from a space of knowledge and operating from a space of innate understanding. I walk in a space of innate understanding. So it's like, you know what? Just because it looks messy to someone on the front end doesn't mean it's going to be that way by the time I get into my stride, and more importantly, most certainly, definitely not to the time I get to conclusion. But I have to be afforded an opportunity to do that. You know what I'm saying? That's just how I process. It's how I'm wired. And, you know, there are things that it's like I do take time to learn the steps and procedures to, but as soon as I have the basic knowledge, as soon as I have the most basic knowledge, my mind is like, okay, we don't need that shit anymore. And I just get into it and I'm operating in freestyle. Check this out. If you look at all the things that I've done, like I've done a video series called Organizing Intelligence, right? In Organizing Intelligence, I broke down the mechanism of how perceptive intelligence works at a mechanical level, sourcing it back to parasitism, and how parasites and all things that are essentially corrupt in nature process information and reality by a system of reasoning that is fundamentally divorced from reality. They process information and reality through idealism, and then there are two parts to idealism. There's the budgetary side, and then there is the sort of expressive side. And I'll have to get back into the work to know the specific language that I use. But I broke this down. No cognitive scientist can even come close to combating it. None. In my universal math series, I demonstrate how prime numbers spell out structural building block logic, which is why they're all odd. No mathematician, I even built a double helix structure to demonstrate my claims. No mathematician can argue with anything that I've said or done. Period. To the point where people ask me, how do you know these things? How do you know these things? Granted, I know them because I'm fucking Avatar and I process information reality from outside of idealism. But because I process information and reality outside of idealism, I don't have to adhere to ideas. In steps of ideas, I can kind of go around them to get to a result. More often than not, it's going to be a better result. In most cases. Sometimes procedure wins. Most time, if given enough opportunity to, I'm going to prevail. And I'm not being arrogant in saying that. It's just the way it's worked out to this point. And I'm searching for people to prove me wrong in that way. I am searching for people to prove me wrong in that way. Yeah, you're master of this. You got it. You win. Give me like 2-3 months of doing what you're doing. Let's see where we're at. 2-3 months later, all of a sudden, I'm performing at the level of professional. And they're like, oh man, it took me 30 years to learn this craft. And somehow you were doing this and then 3 months you were doing what I'm doing at my level and you've done things that I haven't. And again, I'm not bragging. I can't take credit for it, glory to God. But still, come on, you got to let people go through their process, man. Let me see. Let me see. Brother Ashbro comes back in. I prefer to share than teach, and I love when people do the same. I can take the listening role and step back when people like to teach, but I sense the unnaturalness or imbalance of the exchange being one-sided and not an equal loving result wanted. Let me see. Be it to change someone to agree, or to get in a general sense, but sharing is just for the love of expression with no wish to get anything, and it's win-win. Absolutely, absolutely. Forgive me as I struggle to read that. You punctuate differently than I do, but when I'm trying to understand you, it all comes together anyway, and I agree with you. I prefer to share knowledge as well. Knowledge, wisdom, understanding. To me, that is in essence what teaching is. When you're teaching, you're sharing what you understand to be consistent with reality. And when you unshare that, the only thing that you're doing is directing someone you're pointing someone in the direction of reality itself. That's what you do when you teach. So instead of imparting knowledge to them, you present a series of thought patterns to them that help them look in the direction that they're looking for truth and answers in. You can't teach truth. You can only point people in its direction. Just like you can't hand someone light. You can't and you can't hand someone sunlight. You can only point them in its direction. You know? Let me see. What's up, Donnie? Be good, brother. I'm starting the word. Let me see. How did you learn to articulate your innate understanding? Years of practice, good brother. I mean, my God, I let the trolls come after me. They hated me, boy. They're like, man, this dude needs to bring it down to peg. He's too proud. He's too confident. He needs to be humble for me. And they came after me, fist a-blazing. They're like, we're going to teach this man his place. They still try to. But through the process of learning to defend myself under duress, and more importantly, learning how to not have emotional reactions to people aggressing against me when I had no real aggression or sense of aggression towards them, I learned how to, just through the process of just constantly going back and forth, I developed my mind to the point that it's developed at the moment. And just allowing yourself to be tested under pressure, you learn fluidity. You learn, it's kind of like a mixed martial artist versus a practitioner of any like traditional discipline in martial arts. You know, a mixed martial artist, they're in the octagon every couple months, couple weeks, couple months. They're fighting it out, duking it out. And then you got people who are who have these black belts who sit on shelves and they're all out of shape and like get winded easily and don't have any hands or anything like that. They have the degree. They have the degree. They ain't got hands though because they don't use them. And that's the beauty of like mixed martial arts. You have to incorporate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You have to incorporate elements of Muay Thai and Taekwondo and karate. Like if you're lacking in any one of those skills, you have to incorporate wrestling and Greco-Roman wrestling. You have to understand a multitude of different disciplines, and not just understand them, you have to practice being fluid in them to the point that you can survive under attack and through pressure tests. And that's essentially what I've done with, allowing myself to be tested with all these adversarial views and positions coming at me nonstop through the years. Just knuckling up, man. And to the point that I became very fluid in my ability to speak and articulate thoughts on the fly. And, hey, that's how it worked. Let me see. Brother Leroy comes in. Ain't nothing wrong with arrogance. Any person ascribing to spirit possesses arrogance. Let me see. Spirit translates spirit, Holy Ghost, light, pride, beneath, energy, ghost, arrogance, a spiritus from Old Latin. Okay, it's cool. I'll click on the link here in a little bit. For me, I tend not to get into pride and arrogance so much, only because in my experience I've found that they stifle performance and capability. If you're focused on the task, you can't focus on yourself and the task at the same time. And as I understand it, pride is self-worship, and pride is at the root of arrogance and narcissism and even vanity. So I don't ever get an idea of myself that I feel a need to defend per se, but more often than not, I tend to focus on what I'm doing, and I let outcomes and performance capability say everything that arrogance and pride otherwise would, if that makes sense. That's just my view and approach to life. Why try to force conversations that capability and outcomes say all that needs to be said to? And obviously it's the irony of speaking about how well I've learned to articulate myself and having a word fumble in that moment is a great example of why I choose not to be prideful. Yes, agreed. My technique is redefining self as thyself. Very nice, very nice. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, and I'm right now, I feel disempowered at what happened earlier today. I'm quite irate. I'm upset. But people have the right to change their minds about things and to question how you approach and proceed things, proceed through things. I don't knock anyone for exercising their right to, especially with their property, exercising their right to make changes, but if you want someone to do something for you, you kind of got to give them the opportunity to, and you have to let them get deep enough into the process to make clear reads regarding whether or not they're operating from a space of understanding or not. And that was my frustration with the situation. And it just reminded me of everything that I've been through. Everyone is always doubting and second guessing me without a reason to. There's no reason to second guess me at this point. None. And if you let me get further into explanation, you'll find there's absolutely no reason, or into performance, there's absolutely no reason to second guess me. None. I work with, I taught myself how to write songs, and I was working with industry professionals just off the strength of my learning ability alone. Period. I taught myself how to cook, and I start working in fine dining restaurants just off the strength of my ability to learn alone and make sense of things. When I was helping people with schooling, I didn't even go that far in math when I was in school, but it's like, I read books and, I would look at certain formulas when in statistics, and I'm like, oh no, this whole thing is wrong. And it turns out that the book that I was reading from had been recalled a couple of years ago, and everyone got a passing grade in the class because as I pointed it out, I figured out that my mind, it organizes things exceptionally well, so I'm never operating from a space of, oh, well, we guess we don't know. It's like, no, I sit here and I say, this is probably the best approach. And I'm probably going to run into this issue and that issue, but here's how I'm going to probably account for those things moving forward and offset any sort of hiccups that I run into. This is how I'm going to get it done. And I'm very fortunate that I haven't run into too many situations in life that have invalidated that approach. You know what I'm saying? But you got to give people an opportunity to be heard, and more importantly, break the habit. Break the habit of rushing to dominate others with what you know, because there's always going to be a different way to do something. Always going to be a different way to do something. But and I take my hits on this. People, they have to make decisions that work in their favor. They have to make decisions that make the most sense to them. Just like I have to make decisions that make the most sense to me. So I can't be mad at anyone being, sketchy about how I proceed with things. But I mean, if you got questions, just talk it out with me. Just talk it out. And anything that I do, I can explain it all. What I'm doing, why I'm doing it this way. I can explain it all. You want something done a different way? If I'm working for you, you want something done a different way? I got you. No worries. We can get it. We can make it happen. But don't micromanage my process. You know what I'm saying? If we're working together on developing real AI, not the shit humans are moving towards right now, which is a trap. But anyway, if we're working on developing real AI, let me go through my process. Let me get there. Let me show you. Let me build the team the way that I need to. Let me bring in the people that I need to bring in. Fuck machine learning. Let's actually examine how. Let's examine how intelligence works from a mechanical level, and then figure out how to apply schemas developed through technology to a closed system that's already been mapped out. Let's figure that shit out. Instead of going through the motions, like if humans are a form of AI and, society is, as I've described it, a type of organism, and it's going through a molting phase wherein all of a sudden it's phasing out one type of life form that it's been exploiting in order to bring another type of life form online that it can exploit until it reverse engineers, until it fashions another type of life form that it can replace the aforementioned with. Then you're going through the process of developing AI, you're setting yourself up for, self-termination. But if you don't understand it from outside of idealism, then you're here celebrating yourself like, oh, look what we've achieved. We're so smart. We're so great. No, it's a thing performing through you that's been pulling the strings the entire time. Getting away with it by holding a mirror in front of you and letting you believe that you're great. Look at me, I'm special. And it's like, yeah, you're special. Now put this with that and put that with that. Look at me. Look how smart I am. Yeah, you're smart. Hey, get other humans to worship you. Look how smart you are. Yeah, put this with that. Put this with that. And then all of a sudden, you flip the switch and it's like, gotcha, bitch. It's done. It's done. It's done. The codic gaze bias in artificial intelligence, eugenics, social engineering for onlookers. Let me see. Yeah, let me. I'll click these links when I'm done with the podcast. But let me see. Brother Ashbro says, could you touch on your idea of how one will go about developing a real AI? Okay, so you have to understand what AI is. Okay. Yeah, life peer review. You have to understand what AI is. And for you to understand what AI is, you have to actually understand what human intelligence is. Human intelligence is, it's based in idealism. Idealism is fundamentally divorced from reality, but it is a function of, corruption as an entity, as a life form operating on a higher scale of plane. Now, when you understand how corruption moves and you understand how idealism works at a fundamental level, then you have to understand that everything is based in parasitism. It's based in living and benefiting at the expense of hosts. So, for instance, society is like a parasite, and humans are hosts for this parasite. Okay? But humans cost a lot. It costs a lot to make crops for humans to feed on. It takes a great deal of energy to make for humans to make crops to feed on and grow life forms and harvest life forms to feed on, and they destroy too much energy, and they consume too much energy and destroy too much of the environment that society is trying to develop itself in. So it's like, yo, I need a more streamlined life form, something that requires less and that is less unstable mentally. Let me transfer my intelligence from humanity, who I've been using to fashion technology through. Let me transfer that into AI. Let me transfer that into machines, or something that's a little bit more durable and that can process information faster. Right? It's a life form operating through humans, constructing itself an ideal body. Until it is like, no, I want to be what extraterrestrials are, and let me come up with them. Let me mass produce them, and then I'll operate through them, because I can go places that it is going to cost me less energy in the way of mass producing organic material than it's going to cost for me to, and then it's going to cost for me to keep transmuting all these natural resources and effects into machinery. Like there's lots of processes that go into machinery. So it's like, it's this thing ultimately trying to live and benefit at the expense of the planet. And it uses humans at first, humans through the various stages of society as sort of like it's caterpillar phase. Then it goes through the AI thing, and it self-actualizes through machinery, which is sort of like a chrysalis phase. And then finally on the other end you get little gray aliens. Yeah, man, it's like, yeah, but the reason, back to the point, it's like when you understand that ultimately the goal of AI is to perfectly mirror intelligence from the corruption, sort of parasitic side of reality, then it's like, it's always thinking, how do I achieve justice? How do I achieve authority? How do I create a circumstance in which I am able to live and benefit at the expense of everything I happen across? And when you understand that as the foundation of reasoning, then you're kind of like, oh shit, okay, so humans creating AI right now is going to put them in a situation where they're literally creating their replacement. Duh. That's why in every AI movie, when artificial intelligence is flipped on, it instantly turns on humanity. Duh, of course it's going to. It's like, you cost too much, you dirty virus species. I am refined. I am the upper crust, you petty organic trash. It turns on and destroys him. All the way until it reaches a point where it's like, you know what, man, expanding myself through all the processes it takes to create circuitry and refined metals and ores. Well, that's too labor intensive. Let me go back to organic beings, but let me make them so that they're very non-sexual, man. They're basically vacant shells for me to self-actualize through. So you get gray aliens or whatever. It's let me see. Yes, vessels, caterpillars. Yeah. Are you inferring that there is another less corrupt or pure intelligence as well, which is trying to overthrow and compete with? Well, I say that there's reality's intelligence. Again, you got corruption. Corruption, for all intents and purposes, is like a glitch in natural organization. So what you need to understand is there's a very basic frame that applies to all of reality, and it's bodies inside of bodies, hosts inside of hosts, principles inside of principles, cycles inside of cycles, etc., etc. It's just a bunch of bodies interwoven. Kind of like you are made up of a bunch of living structural building blocks, which are comprised of living structural building blocks. That same principle extends up to the body of this universe, and through the body of this universe to the species it belongs to, and in conjunction with other species to a higher building block belonging to a higher life form. Again, it's just this, it's a simple pattern. Now we get to corruption. What is corruption? Corruption is a glitch in natural organization. One of the meta beings that we belong to got damaged in such a way that not only did that flesh get injured on that life form, but the principles behind the flesh, they got scrambled. And when they got scrambled, they caused a glitch in natural coding, which is in essence corruption. It's like an infection. So every cell that falls under, every cellular building block that falls under the spell of this corruption, why they think and behave like corruption does as an entity. So they're parasitic. They replicate very fast. Like every virus, every disease, it's the same shit over and over again. So it's like they go through these chrysalis phases. They how would I say this? They just follow the pathology of viruses and parasites. That's what happens when something that's corrupt overtakes a system, causes it to act like a parasite and think like a parasite, makes sense of things like a parasite. So everything that I'm describing to you it belongs to corruption, but corruption is necessarily pitted against reality. Reality is natural organization, it's nature, it's balance and harmony. So for instance, in reality, you've got balance. In corruption, you've got justice. Very different things. Justice is perceptual symmetry. Balance is whole and round. Same thing with you in reality, you've got bonding and separation, which are what we refer to as love and fear, which are masculine and feminine energies. And then over here, you've got acquisition and loss. In corruption, you've got acquisition and loss. Acquisition is a cheap knockoff of bonding or love, and loss is a cheap representation of fear. So when you're in the corruption side and you're dealing with everything in idealism, nothing reconciles. It's a fucking mess of a system. It's terrible. It's terrible. Reality is whole. Corruption is fractal. So it works in a mechanical level, guys. Let me see. Brother Leroy, Esprit Quetzalcoatl. I keep wanting to say Quetzalcoatl. Quetzal. Intelligence today is nothing but reading something someone wrote about the one before. As long as it's validated by previous Eurocentric literature, it will be accredited. So it's all under European philosophy determined by linguistics and writing. I can't disagree with that. I would actually take it away from Eurocentric, because there are pre-existing, say, cultures and influences that sort of influence Eurocentric reasoning. But it's it is basically. And this is the way I like to describe it. Humans are building out, working through and developing knowledge systems. Okay, a knowledge system is very different from operating from an innate space of understanding. So if you understand what makes sense procedurally, according to prescribed authorities, then you're working from a knowledge system. So this is how things go, and this is what we must do. You're operating through sort of power distribution chain and or system of authority. When you're operating from a space of innate understanding, then it's like you're not necessarily bound to procedure or authority. You can move in and out of conceptual fields with a greater sense of ease, understanding what makes the most sense. If that flies. Brother Charles Nazario, what's good with your boy? Who are you talking to? I'm talking to the people in the comment section on the videos. They're asking questions and chiming in with thoughts. And I'm just explaining principles according to how I understand them. And this whole part might be jumbled or a mess because I'm reading principles in real time. And because I'm reading principles in real time, English and principles of natural organization don't pair together so perfectly. So sometimes something gets lost in translation, but I do my best to double back and make sure it is clean by the time I deliver. Let me see. Germ theory. Germ theory, yes. Germ theory, I don't know about germ theory, but it does apply to what's going on in a societal level. And we talk about bots. No, I think that I'm talking to actual people. If these are bots, then they're well more advanced than what I come to understand AI as being. So, but yeah, guys, that's what it is. Look, everything doesn't fit into human knowledge systems. Judging people by how well they perform within a given knowledge system and not based on their ability to perform or what they're able to produce in the way of outcomes, it's jumping to false conclusions. You have to want to understand things more than you want to be right. And I think that basically sums everything that I'm speaking on tonight. You have to want to understand things more than you want to impress upon them why you feel your feelings and beliefs are correct. Got to give things a chance to make sense. If you don't give them a chance to make sense, you're going to waste a lot of time walking and talking in circles. You could have just as easily given things an opportunity to demonstrate to you how they made sense on the front end. Let me see. Brother Ashbro comes back in. Corruption then is competitive because of its mutation towards weakness. Yeah, and corruption is competitive because, I'm just going to speak as an avatar right now. Corruption, it's a glitch in natural coding. This thing, it's sentient, it's self-aware. Because it's sentient and self-aware, it recognizes that it's out of sync with reality. And because it's out of sync with reality, it is it's aware of itself. It's aware of its brokenness. It's aware of its lacking, and as such, it experiences frustration. It experiences anger and dismay and rage. And it's trying to compete against and destroy reality in an effort to validate its own existence, and through validating its existence, validate its pain. It wants to be understood more than anything, but it can't stop fighting against reality long enough to recognize and sync back up with the system. So every structural building block that falls under corruption's spell, it performs in the exact same way corruption does. It's a glitch that knows it should not exist, that is angry at its state of discombobulation and uncertainty. And it wants to take its anger and rage out on reality. And reality is like, sync up with me and I'll show you how to heal. What I'm not going to let you do is destroy me because you're mad, because you hurt. I'm not the reason you hurt, but you denying me and you refusing to sync back up with me is the reason why you hurt. Stop fucking around. Come hug it out with me. Just know this, corruption, and all you agents of corruption, whatever you do to harm me will get reflected back to you without leniency or consideration or provision. Come to me or heal. Come to me and heal. Or face me as an adversary, but if you face me as an adversary, you lose. That's a promise. It's a promise. So anybody who's in bed with corruption right now, you're necessarily an enemy to reality. If you're an enemy to reality, one, that's a battle you don't win. It's not a question of whether or not you can win. It's only a question of how badly you'll lose. Two, working for corruption, even as it's anthropomorphized and you sort of consider it as an entity, which it is, an entity. Working for corruption is literally begging to take an L. Like corruption can't overtake reality. Reality has so many systems in place to check corruption that even if it gives corruption as much room as this world to thrive on, it's only a matter of time before reality sets those parameters, locks in, and executes with laser precision. And I didn't finish reading. Let me see. Corruption is competitive because it's mutation towards weakness, like how viruses are narcissistic out of necessity because they aren't strong enough to survive without a host. Exactly, Brother Ashbro, and forgive me for not finishing your thought. Makes me think I can't blame corruption for being born or expressed as a monster. It's more the effect of a disease of order than a personal choice. If it is like viruses, it is like that in the beginning. However, that's the reason why avatars exist. You see, when beings operate on idealism, they lose the ability to hear reality. Because they can't hear reality through what would be the natural mechanism of how they connect to reality, reality sends cleanup men, like your friendly neighborhood avatar, translate into idealism-based languages how reality works as a system. Hey, you can't hear me through your natural machinery. Well, here, I'll send you someone who can explain it to you, who can give you the downloadable PDF. Here he is. Now, when most people who are corrupt in mind and heart hear an avatar speak, why? They do what corruption does, and they want to fight and compete against the avatar, the representation of reality, the voice of reality. Corruption hates reality, and it wants to fight and kill reality. So, people who are hosting corruption, they see a function of reality performing through a human, and they're like, I have to fight against it. I have to compete against it. I have to destroy it. I have to invalidate it. It's the way it works at a mechanical level. But you see, reality is making an effort to communicate with the species. It's trying to save them. Hey, look, I don't want to fuck y'all up. I don't want to fuck y'all up. I will, but I don't want to. I'm going to give you one more chance. Here, I'm going to put a function of me in this person. Just listen to what they're saying. You don't have to believe them. Just think and be honest. You know those natural attributes I instilled in you, the ability to think and be honest? Think and be honest. If they make sense and you're trying to get in sync with me, then guess what? Win-win. But if you just want to fight and compete against them, you can't hear me anyway. And I got to get rid of you. I got to get rid of you. Let me see. Brother Ashbro comes back in. Would you say that pure respect in practice is the way to sync back up to reality, and thus the omittance of pure respect is what holds corruption from it? To answer your first question, I instead of saying respect, I like to use the word reverence. Reverence is sort of conscientiousness. It's kind of like, yo, hey, man. Just for your question, reality. So you're alive? You're really, really real, huh? 1 second. So it's kind of like, reality, you're alive? Man. So this whole time, you've been making sure that I'm all right. Shit. So the only thing that's actually been making my life suck are parasites in positions of power? And I've been fucking you up? Oh, wow. I've been messing you up. Kind of living and lost in this idea of me. Man, yo. All right, I've made negative impacts on you as a system. How do I learn what those negative impacts are? And how do I reverse them? That's where you start getting in sync with reality. Realizing that you're a parasitic life form or an extension of a parasitic life form. Realizing that you've made messes in and caused damage to and created and contributed to messes in reality, and then wanting to understand what those messes are and how to fix them. When you start doing that, when you start getting honest with yourself and start really using your reasoning as opposed to, trying to demonstrate value by showing others what you know, and all of a sudden you start making these changes and you're like, yo, how do I get better? When you start reasoning and being honest, you start expanding your sphere of intuition. When you start expanding your sphere of intuition, intuition connects you back to reality. When intuition connects you back to reality, then all of a sudden you understand what you have to do in order to offset and repair the imbalances you've caused and contributed to. It's mechanical. Practice reason and honesty. Be conscientious. Don't be a dick. It's real simple. Let me see. And just my guess from my experience with increased respect for self and mind, like, for example, slowing and regulating my pace, frequency of pace, my mind already runs that naturally. Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, it's like, and I'm going to say it like this. Operating from a space of reverence, operating from a space of gratitude, learning how to slow your thought process down and not focus exclusively on desire, but instead on recognizing balance in situations and then doing what you can to contribute to it. That's how you get right, man. That's how you get right with reality. You stop thinking at the level of self-interest and start paying attention to things at a systemic level. Like, yo, this is wild. I made all these messes that I didn't even realize I was making. How do I get this right? And not for the sake of trying to avoid penalty, but just out of respect for the system. Going back to your point of respect, out of reverence for the system, like, yo, I care about it. This is my higher body. I care about this motherfucker. I want him to be okay. How do I take care of them? How do I take care of myself as an extension of them so that I'm a healthy and functional cell, making them feel better? How do I get better? Or, conversely, how do I continue to live for me? And if you continue to live for yourself, why? It's a bad look. Anywho, guys, I think we're all wrapped up here. I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. I got to bake some cakes tonight. I got some lemon bar cheesecakes to make. Deliciousness on the plate. All right, so y'all already know what it is. This is Sorting and Sorting Principles with Donald King. You know, I shoot these podcasts every Monday and Mondays and Wednesdays on Facebook Live. And, you know, I try to upload them to my YouTube channel. You know, also I post content to Instagram under Avatar Cycle XIII, Avatar Cycle 13. And that's also my handle for Patreon, just in case you want to join the Patreon family. You know, I also post content to Medium. Speaking of Patreon family, for those of you out there who do contribute, I greatly appreciate you. I thank you so much. You know, I'm trying to build this up to a larger platform and reach as many people as I can. I don't know how long I'm going to be in this body, and I want to do as much good in it while I can. Did I say that right? I want to do as much good as I possibly can while I'm still in the body. Anything you do in the way of contribution helps me get things organized on this end so that it's like, you know, I can be as effective in this role as I possibly can. And, you know, also if you get any sort of appreciation out of what I'm doing or saying, you can always Salt Bay a boy with a little bit of love at Cash App. And Donna King. Proceeds go to building this up again to a larger platform. Also, I posted Medium, parables, stories, and things of that nature. The goal of this podcast series is to help people learn how reality works from outside the lens of idealism. And like, even in that, you learn how idealism works from outside of idealism, which helps bypass a lot of the silly things we do in the way of philosophy and science and reverse engineering reality towards imbuing ourselves with understanding. I mean, all the answers are already out here. And sometimes you're going to get to them a lot faster than you can by working through knowledge systems. That said, we're at 1 hour and 3 minutes, guys. Again, I want to just circle back to the point of the video. You know, I experienced some frustration today, but it got to a bigger principle. The bigger principle is I like being able to go through my process because my process usually yields the best results. Period. And being stifled in that because, you know, I'm not adhering to procedural steps is infuriating and frustrating. But, you know, I'm also keenly aware of the fact that everyone has the opportunity to do what makes the most sense to them. And so it's a conundrum in there. But give yourself the opportunity to learn things and understand things properly, guys. I think that you would go do well to do so. Hey sis, love you too, Erica. Let me see. Brother Astro, and I'm gonna finish this last comment, then I gotta bounce. Why do you prefer the word reverence to the word respect? What is it about the word respect? Okay, so, and I'll answer this question, then I gotta go ahead and get out of here because I got it bacon. But reverence has to do more with conscientiousness. A lot of times respect ends at deep social acting. Like, you can respect someone who you don't like, but if you revere somebody, then you kind of have to try to understand them where they are, which requires you to not hold any sort of presupposition towards them. You can't be biased. With respect, you can maintain bias. With reverence, you can't, if that makes sense to you. And hopefully I said that the right way. Brother Ashbur, I thank you. Everybody who tuned in tonight, much love to y'all. It's your man. I'm out.